I don't really need this anymore. I already won. Hello and welcome to Endstep. Oh, okay. Hi, welcome to Endstep, the Upkeep after show. Last week was our Halloween special, where we all played spooky tribal decks, and I won. It was my first win in a while. Well, I might win the Eldraine episode. We haven't actually filmed that yet as of the filming of this, but otherwise, this is my first win since episode 12, so that feels pretty good. I don't know why everyone else is so sad about it. I think it's great. But we're going to today be talking more about these decks and more about the game in general. I think overall, for Steven especially, Tommy more or less, but Preston, this is the second time we've seen your deck now, or for your sliver deck, and what the heck's going on, man?
I think if he could answer that question, he wouldn't be losing every game he plays with it. But
so you were saying during the game that you have, 39 lands in the deck? So you're still just not hitting them? You're not hitting your card draw?
Yeah, well, I was drawing a couple cards that game, but yeah, I just was not hitting my lands. Mm-hmm. Now, I did keep a bad hand that game, admittedly. I had one land in hand at the beginning, but...
So what was so good about the hand that made you keep it?
I had the World Tree to fix all my lands once I drew them, and I had that Mana Sliver. Mm-hmm. So all I needed was one land, I'd get the Mana Sliver, and I could start playing stuff that way, at least.
Gotcha.
Which I was doing for a while, but then the board wipe happened, and I still wasn't drawing any of my lands.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so Steven, you did end up getting knocked out of the game first, but you had a really crazy, explosive game. So 2 real quick questions for you, I guess, for starters. What do you think was the key piece for you popping off? What was the most important card in allowing that to happen? And then 2, what is Werewolf's biggest weakness?
I think we all know Werewolf's biggest weakness.
What is it?
Creatures with flying.
No creature, like they have too many flyers?
Creatures that have flying are my weakness. I am unable, because wolves in this, that's honestly the main reason why I got out of the game so quick, is because all you guys hit me with creatures with flying. I can't do anything with that. There are a couple wolves and werewolves with reach. None of them are good, but they are in the deck, but there's only like 2 or 3.
Do you have Hurricane in the deck?
I don't even know what that is. So
you pay X to deal X damage to all creatures with flying. It's a green card.
I will.
There's also a couple red cards that do something like that.
I'll take note of that for future reference. Nevertheless, that's still the greatest weakness of my deck. Is just other creatures attacking me that have flying.
But what was the main key to you popping off? Because, I mean, you had a crazy impressive board state.
There wasn't any necessarily one thing. It's just everything was helping each other. That's the point of wolves and werewolves.
at least from what I saw, I think the biggest things that happened for you that let you pop off were the Azuri's Predation, coupled with whatever card you had that was making wolf tokens on your upkeep.
Yeah, Howlhenge Overlord.
Yeah.
I love that card.
That was probably your best card.
Everyone's just like, why is he leaving all that mana?
Yeah. So I think
the green counter spell?
just because like we didn't have any answers for either of those, it kind of just let you pop off.
It's a really cool card.
And those were the two threats that made us go, okay, we need to kill Steven now.
Well, that and Tovolar, but that's obvious.
And when Tovolar's transformed into the werewolf side, I can pay mana to buff up creatures.
A little bit more about my Be'lakor deck. I actually almost played my Scarab God Zombie Tribal deck, but I actually played that deck in episode 1, and also I did a poll recently, and you guys seemed more interested in seeing this deck, so between those 2 things, I decided to pull this out. You kind of got to see the main thing. The problem is the curve on this deck is crazy high, so as you saw, there's more lands than the average deck would probably run. There's a lot more mana rocks than the average deck probably needs, so there are games where I play where I just get flooded and I don't draw any action, but luckily this wasn't one of those games. You did see the literal best card in the deck, which is Herald of Slaanesh, which is the one that makes my demons cheaper and gives them haste, and it's only 3 mana. So it is by far the best card in my deck. Then follow-up would probably be Kindred Discovery, because it's kind of the only card draw spell in the deck that doesn't make me lose a bunch of life. That is something I've done with this deck a couple times, is I've just killed myself. The best way around that, though, is a cool card that one of our patrons showed me. This is Raphael, Fiendish Savior. It gives my demons +1/+1 and lifelink, so that's a good way to stabilize and come back. that's kind of the gist of the deck. Otherwise, it's just big, overcosted demons that hopefully can deal a little bit of damage if they get to stick around. Tommy, you got a pretty decent game in as well. You got to play a handful of vampires. This is your, third time
This is
playing
the
this
third time on the show. Yeah.
How do you think it compared to the other couple times you got to play it?
One of the other ones was Plane Chase, so that was just a wild episode.
That was
anyway,
an awesome episode.
And probably the closest I've come to winning with this deck on the show.
Yeah, you almost won that. Yeah, you almost won that game.
But I honestly, it felt okay. The problem was it just didn't get to do the biggest threat from my commander, which is the no-cost vampires on attack. So the point of that is to hopefully build up enough blood tokens that like you get a couple of solid turns where you can just sack those 2 blood tokens, put out a really big threat for free that's tapped and attacking with, that essentially skips summoning sickness and gets indestructible, so it can't be destroyed. So it's just that's the main way the deck wants to win. So if it can't do that because my commander just doesn't make me a ton of blood tokens or whatever, it doesn't do a whole lot. But.
Well, so for a in the near future, you are going to be playing an Edgar Markov deck.
Yeah.
And does that mean the end of this one? Are you going to have 2 vampire decks, or is this one going to have to go?
I think sadly it will mean the end of Strafon as the commander for the deck. I'm probably going to keep the cards obviously and see if there's anything that I can upgrade with that. I just don't see a reason to have two tribal decks of the same tribe
For sure.
with that share 2 colors of the 3
Right.
that it could have.
Right. And since this is the last iteration of your vampire deck of this iteration of it that will exist, is there any last cards you wanted to highlight for the viewers? I mean, you can go see our deck list in the video description of that episode, but is there anything else worth highlighting that you think is cool?
Not that we haven't seen before.
Okay.
I mean, we've seen some other cool stuff. Like there was Glasscast Heart is fun to potentially end games with. Rakdos Charm is always fun if you can.
That would have been pretty good top deck against Steven.
To top deck that against Steven, with all those creatures, that would have been very nice.
And Preston, this is the second time we've seen your deck for your Sliver deck, and it still hasn't done too much. And for at least the rest of season 2, there's not an opportunity for it to come back.
Maybe for Revenge Week, but
yeah, maybe for Revenge Week. But is there any cards that you think are really cool that maybe like the average Sliver deck? Oh, lands. Yeah, this is
these are the 5 I really want to show off. I didn't get a chance to play any of them. I did get 1 forest.
You did get 1 forest at like the second to last turn. Yeah.
Lands are good. Steven, we've seen your Tovlar deck a couple times, and sometime in the near future, there's going to be a 1v1 game where it's you and Jason going head-to-head, Tovlar versus Tovlar. Is there anything you want to highlight here going into that, or do you just want people to go watch that video if it's out now or when it comes out soon?
I mean, I feel like I've already kind of shown off the deck a lot. I've played it, three times now? At least 2 of those times I'd say it did well. Not in Tribal Week when you destroyed us with a dragon deck and I didn't even get a chance to do anything.
It's magnificent.
Anyways, I feel like I've already kind of shown off a lot of the good cards. Everbuck Caretaker is one of the best werewolf cards, period.
Yeah, for sure. So something about the game was that I had Decree of Pain in my opening hand. So there were a couple times where I almost cast it, just because Steven was getting so out of hand, and Preston had a couple good slivers early in the game. But I just kind of held on to it because I knew that Tommy had a board wipe.
I was giving you a ton of free information with that.
So there's telling me that you had a board wipe. But then also I figured, Steven, at that point, I think I had a little bit more life than you guys, if I remember right. So I kind of figured that I could just hold on to it for a while, and I either wouldn't have to cast it or I wouldn't have to cast it for a while. So it ended up just sitting in my hand the whole game. But what did you guys have in your hands? Were there any cards that if you had the ability to cast them, it would have changed the tide of the game?
No, not really, because I would have cast it if I could. I mean, the Blasphemous Act, you could argue there might have been a better time to use that, even though you were still the biggest threat at that point. Even after that, you still kind of remained the biggest threat. So, I mean, you could argue that the Blasphemous Act, because I had that in my opening hand, so, you could argue there would have been a better time for that. And not basically telling you I had a board wipe and then it was Blasphemous Act. But other than that, no, I just didn't really get much in the way of of answers for other players.
I did have Sliver Grave Mother and Reflections of Litjara in my hand,
Oh, nice.
but I was stuck at 4 mana with those cards for almost the entire game. So
I did, like, the werewolves did what werewolves do. And, I mean, with the issues with flying creatures against me, there's only so much I can do against that.
The last thing I want to specifically highlight about the game was how I won. I won with Liliana's Contract, which says at the beginning of my upkeep, if I control 4 or more demons with different names, I win the game. So this is the fairest alt win con that I could think of that actually works in Commander. There's a couple that I know that would technically be more fair, but they don't work in Commander for various rulings. Because this is an enchantment that doesn't have any protection itself, so you can get rid of the enchantment. I have to have at least 4 creatures, and demons are a heavy, expensive tribe, so you have to have it costs a ton of mana to get that many of them, so it would be pretty ezy to get rid of them. So it's the fairest of fair. So I will
with different
say,
names, so you can't even just make a bunch of tokens. It has
Right,
to be
right.
yeah.
I will say that's not that big of a deal because it's Commander, it's a singleton format, so it's not that big of a
I
deal,
think
but it
the
is
fairest
technically.
one is the tap un-15 tap creatures.
Oh, yes,
Yeah,
Halo Fountain, I think, from Streets of New Capenna. And I'm also not going to feel bad about it because unless I end up winning the Eldraine episode, which we haven't filmed yet, this will be my first win since episode 12, and all of those games, I got knocked out first except for one of them, so I'm not going to feel bad about winning, but I will say the fact that you guys had so many opportunities to keep me from winning that way because the enchantment was removable, the creatures were removable. I guess it maybe wouldn't have mattered because you knew that I had Bloodthirster in my hand and I was going to be able to recast it next turn. So, and I had the other one that was dealing extra damage to you guys. So it probably didn't matter. I probably would have just killed you guys on my turn anyways, even if you were able to get rid of my Liliana's Contract alt win. But do you guys feel like you guys are running enough removal in your decks?
In this one, probably not, and that's part of why I want to get Edgar Markov is to throw white in there and be able to
White
get
does have great
some
removal.
of those really good removal spells. So that's part of my problem with this deck is there's just not a whole lot of targeted removal or basically non-creature removal. I don't have a lot in this deck, so that's one of the reasons I kind of want to take it apart for Edgar Markov, but.
I have 3 removal spells, and I think 1 or 2 of my slivers has some removal stuff. Like there's the one where you pay 3, you sacrifice a sliver, blow up a permanent. So
Yeah.
I got a couple things, but I could do more.
I'm kind of the same way. Like, I have a few, but, could maybe run a couple more.
Yeah, I'm really big on. I've been trying to encourage the guys to just run more answers because this is such an easy thing to stop. It's such an easy way to keep me from winning the game.
I think
it didn't happen.
I think that's part of why we were so salty that
Yeah,
we thought we
that's
lost.
why everyone was so
is
sad.
Because from the moment that hit the board, Preston and I were like, "Well, what do we got?" And apparently, and for both of us, the answer was nothing in our hands. So
Yeah.
hope we top deck something.
Yeah, well, and
when you're
technically-
in that, you're already kind of bummed out. You're like, "Well, this sucks." But
Well, and in Rakdos, I mean, you do have creature removal in those colors, but in
You were drawing 15 cards a turn. You had creatures to replay.
Yeah.
right, but in Rakdos, you only have like what 2 cards that get rid of enchantments: Feed the
Honestly.
Swarm and Chaos Warp. So take this lesson and run more removal in your decks. Run more interaction in general. Run 1 or 2 more board wipes than you think. Run a couple more targeted removals. If you're playing blue, maybe run 1 or 2 more counter spells than you would normally run, just because you're gonna wish you had it. And the other option.
But you're saying, like, if it's in the deck, then I'm always going to have it when I need it.
Well,
that's
so
absolutely not true.
Well, so then run a couple more tutors and or just a lot of card draw, so you're more likely to run it. But that's the other thing. If you have more of them in your deck, you are more likely to draw them. That's just how
Theoretically,
statistics.
yes.
That's
Yeah.
how statistics works.
Yeah, but what are the chances of within 1 draw we were going to get it?
He had 2 because
Unlikely.
he sacrificed Commander Sphere.
I mean, we're splitting hairs at this point. So I mean, it's yes, it's good to run more interaction than you think you might need because you're gonna wish you had it when you don't.
Exactly.
Even though that's no guarantee you're always going to have
Well, sure,
it because
but-
of the nature
but
of the game.
that-
but
yeah,
that's the
that's-
nature of the game with everything.
Yeah, that's singleton formats in a nutshell. I
Yeah.
mean, it's true in constructed formats as well, but because you're running, 4 copies of a card, you're much more likely to find it when you need it. But did you guys have anything else you wanted to add about our Halloween special?
Have a spooky time.
Yeah.
Getting spooky. I don't know.
I'm just
go eat a Kit Kat or
I'm just glad it's fall after the summer we had.
Honestly, this summer sucked. But thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe. Check out any episodes of Upkeep you haven't seen. And like I said, either we just released or are about to release a Tovolar versus Tovolar game. We will see you guys next time. Have a great Halloween, or I hope you had a great Halloween. I don't know what the video release schedule is anymore. Things get weird over here. And we will see you guys later.